I refuse to beg for renewal. I do not stand here as a petitioner at the gate of life. I stand here as life realized. Healing is not a plea, not a bargaining chip slipped beneath the door of heaven. Healing is the recognition of what already is. Therefore I say, and I must say, and I shall say, until it is the flesh of my awareness, I am not pleading for renewal. I am resurrection realized. I am the resurrection and the life, not tomorrow, not in a hereafter promised to a frightened mind, but here, now, as the fact of consciousness. This is not poetry. This is not an encouragement. This is identity. Be still and know that I am God. Know it, not about it. I assume this knowing as my task. Now I will correct a danger before it begins. I am not proclaiming a personal boast. I am not saying Joel is anything. I am not placing a crown upon a human head. It has to be a gentle I, the universal I, the I that said to Moses, I am that I am. Not an egotistical I, not a swashbuckling I, the I that is closer than breathing, the I that formed my inward parts, that breathed into this dust and it became a living soul. That I is resurrection, and I identify as that. I do not mix me with I. If I do, the doctrine collapses into arrogance and fear. But if I remain with the gentle I, the universal I cannot be threatened. I cannot be diminished. I cannot be coerced by appearances. What is my threat? The unguarded mind. An open door through which world thoughts rush like thieves in the night. Fear, medical suggestions parading as law, family histories parading as destiny, time parading as authority, disappointment parading as prophecy. If I do not assume dominion, these will come and sit at my table and call themselves truth. But I cannot permit this. I do not permit this. Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. I stand here the porter at the door of thought. I stand here a tiler over my mind and my body. Nothing of fear enters. Nothing of inevitability enters. Nothing of heredity enters. I receive only the I. I admit only truth. I and the Father are one, and that oneness is my government. Therefore, I assume conscious dominion over mind and body now. Do you hear the shift from asking to acknowledging, from concepts to being? The world teaches me to strive, to plead, to assemble arguments for my healing, as if God were a court of appeal. But the Master did not plead. He unveiled, Lazarus, come forth. That was not an argument. That was the authority of realized I, resurrection, speaking to the belief in absence. In that same spirit, I stand within myself and say, rise. I do not wait for a sign. The sign follows. I do not search for a feeling. The feeling ripens out of identity. Awake thou that sleepest, and arise from the dead, and Christ shall give thee light. I awake to I. Light follows. Now, yes, I have had long periods of practice where the old habit of begging tried to reclaim me. Sometimes it still tries. A report speaks loudly. A date on the calendar threatens. A memory argues its case. But I snap out of it and I return to my government. I return to resurrection realized. And each return is itself the healing. This is the rule for our work together. Doctrine to demonstration. I will speak it until you can feel it, and you will feel it until you cannot doubt it. You will not be asked to believe. You will be brought to behold. We begin with the decree, I am resurrection realized, and we proceed to the evidence, breath quieted, thought stilled, body governed, not by effort, not by struggle, but by the unveiled I that is present where I stand. Therefore, I refuse to beg for renewal. I accept, I assume, I embody resurrection now. And in this instant, healing begins. Stillness is not a collapse. It is a stand. It is not drifting off into a pleasant fog. It is the most alert sobriety of the soul. Be still and know that I am God is not an instruction to go absent. It is a call to take your post. Watch and pray that ye enter not into temptation. I in this moment take my watch. I stand at the doorway of thought as porter and as tiler. I admit only what bears the seal of I. I deny entrance to whatever defileth or maketh a lie. Therefore, I assume conscious dominion over mind and body, not as a feat of personal will, not as a human hero clenching fist and jaw, but as the exercise of God-given governance. Let them have dominion, says Genesis, and I accept that commission. I and the Father are one, and that oneness is my warrant to stand guard. Now, what is my first discipline? The pause before reaction. When a symptom knocks, when a memory shouts, when a message arrives loaded with fear, I do not rush out into the street to wrestle with it. I do not argue. I do not plead. I do not consult 1,000 voices. I stop. I take my post. I let the knock be a knock and not a guest. To him the porter openeth, says the gospel, and that means the porter opens to the shepherd's voice, not to the thief that climbeth up some other way. In that pause, I do not form counter-arguments. I do not take up arms. I obey the master's word to Peter. Put up thy sword. I let the wave pass the hull. I stand and I know. Do you see the difference? Reaction is the old servitude. World thought pulls the strings and I dance. Stillness is dominion. I choose what enters my sanctuary. If the breath races, I do not call it mine and I do not chase it. I gently let it find me where I stand. If the stomach tightens, I do not assign it a prophecy. I let it be a wind on the lake, and I speak within myself as the Master spoke to the sea. Peace, be still. The wind ceases. The great calm is not a trance. It is the government of I over its own household. Let not your heart be troubled. Let not. That is dominion language. I let not because I stand watch. Now, yes, there will be many provocations. A calendar date whispering doom. A headline presenting itself as law. A family story repeating like a drum. At each presentation, I refuse the conscription of reaction. I stop. I return to my post. I say within myself, and say it as one having authority. I, in this instant, assume conscious dominion over mind and body. Nothing of fear enters. Nothing of inevitability enters. Nothing of heredity enters. I and the Father are one. I rest my case in that oneness, and I do not move. In that unmovedness, there is movement. The unseen governance begins to reorder, feeling, breath, rhythm. The issue of life flows from the guarded heart. Stillness, then, is not numbness. It is discernment. It is the lamp trimmed and burning in the night watch. Let your loins be girded about, and your lights burning. I am not sleeping at my post. I am awake to I. I am not scowling at appearances. I am refusing them admittance. I am not crushing the mind. I am quieting it until it listens. For temptation is always the same, to take thought, to react, to grasp. And deliverance is always the same, to pause, to watch, to admit, only I. My sheep hear my voice. The porter opens to that voice and to no other. Now, part of this watch requires a clarity we must take up in our next step. Who is it that stands at the door? If I place a little frightened me there, it will either fight or faint. That will not do. The watch must be kept by the gentle, universal I that cannot be threatened. I will not mix me with I. I will not set a swashbuckler at the gate. I set I, and with I at the door, stillness heals, because dominion has been restored. Now we must make the correction plain, and we must make it without compromise. Do you remember that I did not say my oneness with God? I said my conscious oneness with God, which is not a possession of a person, but the realization of I prior to Joel, prior to biography, prior to all the tales of yesterday and the hopes of tomorrow. If I speak of my oneness, I have already slipped a little me into the sanctuary, and at once the old ego stands there with its shoulders back, ready to fight, ready to boast, ready to fall. I will not permit that. I will not mix me with I. I will not set a swaggering herald at the gate. I set the gentle I. I am meek and lowly in heart, said the Master. And in that meekness the universe bowed. This is the I that cannot be threatened, because it does not defend an image. It reveals reality. Now I must warn you of a danger, for I have seen it in myself and in those I love. There is a swashbuckling I am, a loud declaration that puffs the chest and sharpens the sword and cries, I am the power, I am the light, I am invincible. Put up thy sword. That is not the Christ sense. That is a frightened me dressing itself in the garments of truth, and it will meet error on error's level, argument meeting argument, heat meeting heat, will meeting will, and the battle will rage because the battleground has been chosen by the enemy. Not by might nor by power, but by my spirit, saith the Lord. The gentle I does not contend, it is. It does not convince, it is. It does not advertise, it is. Presence dissolves what argument can only inflame. Why does the egoic declaration fail? Because it grants reality to the very shadow it seeks to banish, and then takes up mental weapons to chase it through dark halls. It says, there is a power against me, but I shall outshout it. That is fear in ceremonial robes. The realized I knows there is no second power. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, one. Therefore, when disturbance knocks, I do not take counsel with fear. I open not the door to debate. I let the gentle I be present, and the shadow must depart because it has no substance in. That light, it is the spirit that quickeneth. The flesh profiteth nothing. The realized I is spirit realized, not flesh fortified. Let me give you a little picture. A friend came to me, call him David, with a tightness in his chest and a tale about his father's fate and the doctor's words. He had learned our phrases well. He stood there reciting, I am the power. I am strong. I am not afraid. And every sentence made his jaw harder. I said, David, put down that sword. Now breathe once, and let the word I come up, not from your head, but from your chest. Say nothing about power. Say nothing about strong, just I. He tried. It was clumsy. The mind fussed. He tried again. On the third breath, the shoulders fell a fraction. On the fifth, the eyes softened. On the seventh, a tear. He whispered, I. And in that whisper, The tightness let go. We then said no triumphal thing. We sat, and we knew the gentle I had entered the scene, and the scene could not hold its terror. Do you catch the bridge to resurrection? Resurrection is not me becoming impressive. Resurrection is not the antique flesh reanimated, nor a calendar date of reprieve. Resurrection is the collapse of the belief that life is in matter or time or circumstance. I am the resurrection and the life, not I shall be when conditions improve. Before Abraham was, I am. Therefore, when I say I am resurrection, realize I am not inflating me. I am witnessing to the one that stands where I appear to be and governs as life itself. In that realization, the tomb of concepts opens, because there was never life entombed. There was only I missed behind the stone of belief. So hear me once more. Do not mix me with I. Let me decrease. Let I increase. I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. When the temptation comes to argue, to prove, to announce greatness, stand down, be still, admit the one. The gentle I is not threatened, and because it is not threatened, it heals without effort, without noise, without conflict. In this quiet, the breath remembers its source, the mind remembers its shepherd, and the body, having no government of its own, yields to the unseen director. And the work of resurrection is done here, now, not by might, not by me, but by I. Now we come to the holy surgery, and I must ask your courage. As long as I carry the word God in my head, I am likely carrying a picture with it, and pictures cannot impart spirit. God is spirit, and spirit does not travel to me through images carved in thought. I have seen the mind draw a throne. I have seen it paint a blaze of light. I have seen it sketch a kindly old presence or a stern judge. And after all the drawing, the mind is still alone with its chalk. The picture is a veil. It is not the presence. I do not say this irreverently. I say it for liberty. If I would be still and know, I must let the words and their paintings fall away. Therefore, I begin to strip, not violently, gently, as one unwrapping a child. I take the word God and I lay it down. I take spirit and I lay it down. I take life, truth, love, law, presence, all of them, and I lay them down. Do you feel what the mind does? It reaches for another word to prop itself up, another syllable to stand on, because the habit of the human mind is to live on scaffolding. But scaffolding is not a house. It is the noise around a house. The Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence before him. Let the earth of concepts be silent. Let the scaffolding come down. The temple is not out there. The temple is here. In that hush, there remains one word that will not go. One word you cannot strip, because it is not a word in the head, but a living point in your being. I feel where it rises. All the other words come up out of the head with a crackle of electricity, but I comes up out of the chest, out of the ribs, out of the place closer than breathing. Place no picture around it. Add no adjective to it. Do not call it holy or mighty or personal. Just I. Before Abraham was, I am. Not a sentence, not a boast, but a pulse. Now, yes, the mind will try to help by thinking about I. That is more scaffolding. I cannot accept its help. I cannot permit the mind to run a commentary while I am entering silence, because commentary is the very restlessness from which I am being delivered. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. Quietness comes when the reaching stops, and the reaching stops when the last handhold of thought is withdrawn. That is why I lay down even the beautiful words, not because they are false, but because they have become my handholds. The truth they point to does not need pointing. The kingdom of God is within you, within, not within a sentence, within you. What then is my work when only I remains? Not to do, but to abide. Abide in me, and I in you. Abiding is not effort. It is the cessation of leaving. I rest as I do not attempt to feel holy. I do not attempt to produce light. I do not attempt to make anything happen. I let I be what it is. In that letting, the breath finds its own gentleness. In that letting, the mind, relieved of its duties as commentator and lawyer, grows quiet enough to receive impartation. And because I am no longer holding a picture or repeating a defense, I can be addressed by that which requires no language at all. Now, do you see the mercy of this? Words had their place. They ushered us to the threshold. They taught, they corrected, they pointed. But at the door, they bow and do not enter. Because inside the sanctuary, there is only I communing with I. Be still and know that I am God. Not know about, know. When I abide as I unadorned, unargued, the dominion we have spoken of ceases to be doctrine and becomes the atmosphere of my being. Stillness begins here, where the last syllable falls, and only the living, felt I remains. Now I must show you how this I felt and not pictured governs where you call body. This is not a theory. It is the most ordinary fact hiding in plain sight. Look here. I lift my hand. I lower it. The hand did not plot. The hand did not decide. Something not in the hand moved it. When you sleep, this hand lies without intention. When you wake, it serves. Therefore, I say, the hand is an instrument. It cannot of itself heal or harm. I can of mine own self do nothing, said the master. And in that saying he revealed the principle. The seen is servant, the unseen is director. If then the hand, visible and tangible, has no counsel of its own, what of the rest, liver, lung, skin, sinew? They report. They do not rule. Who is it that rules? Not a personal me building up will and pushing muscles like a tyrant at the helm. No, the gentle, universal I is the unseen director. In him we live and move and have our being. In that we move. It is not pious language. It is description. While you slept last night, who steadied the breath? Who kept the heart? Who carried on the exchange invisible, the commerce of life in blood and nerve? Which of you, by taking thought, could add 1 cubit to his stature, or 1 heartbeat to his night? You did not. And yet growth continued. Restoration proceeded. Hair and nail extended their quiet testimony. Thou hast covered me in my mother's womb. That was not biology congratulating itself. That was I forming its own vehicle for expression. The unseen director, closer than breathing, governs the body without asking us to help with adjectives or worry. Now here is where we fail our own peace. We mistake a report for a ruler. A symptom announces itself like a loud crier in the street, and claims jurisdiction. It pushes a paper under the door and says, I am the law. I will not permit this. I am the porter at the door of thought. I am the tiler over mind and body. I do not fight the sensation. I do not argue with the feeling. I challenge the claim of authority. By what authority doest thou these things? If the answer is heredity, calendar, rumor, yesterday's tale, I deny jurisdiction. I rest in I, and I let the report relax back into being a report, not a tyrant. Let not your heart be troubled. Let not. I let not. Dominion challenges jurisdiction, not sensation. And when authority is reestablished, sensation, finding no court to sit in, passes. This is the stepladder you must mark and never confuse. On the lowest rung, the physical view, body is cause and mind is victim. Matter thumps the gavel, flesh declares law. On the next rung, the mental scientist says, thought is cause, body obeys. Better, but still divided. Mind is cast as a private magician, ordering flesh around. On the highest rung, the Christ realization, the I governs both thought and body. The unseen director is the only law. Thought becomes a transparency, not a tyrant. Body becomes an instrument, not a source. It is the spirit that quickeneth. The flesh profiteth nothing. I do not despise flesh. I remove from it the crown it never wore. Let me give you a homely proof. A woman called her Ruth came with a forearm that trembled when she lifted a cup. She had been scolding the muscles, praising the other arm, setting little contests the human way. I said, we will not scold. We will not coach. Hold the cup and silently acknowledge, I am not a muscle manager. I am presence. This hand is an instrument. I is the director. She breathed once. The tremor answered with a flourish, as if to say, I am law. She did not argue. She stood watch. On the third breath, the rhythm slowed. On the fifth, the cup rested quietly in the saucer. We did not congratulate a will. We recognized a governance. And I tell you truly, the quiet was not produced. It was revealed when the false magistrate, the belief in a second power, was dismissed from the bench. You will say, but the report feels so near. Yes, feel it, and do not yield it law. Do not paste your name upon it. Do not call it my pain, my condition, my enemy. A report is wind on the lake. The master did not study the wind. He spoke from I. Peace be still, and governance was made visible. I then speak without drama, without contest. Peace be still. I assume conscious dominion over mind and body, and I do not move from that. The sign will follow. Breath will slow. The nervous drum will tire and quiet. The household will answer its head. Now, yes, I will not pretend that holding this post is easy, and we shall speak plainly of the great sabotage in our next work. For the moment, I want you to see that healing is natural. When I recognize that an unseen eye governs body and mind, and no report has final authority, the only way a report becomes a tyrant is if I grant it a self and call it mine. That is the stickiness in our practice, personalizing error, blaming ourselves, or accusing another, and thus furnishing the thief with a key. We will not do that. We will learn to see error as impersonal suggestion and let it drop. But before we strip that blame from our thought, settle this in you now. The body is governed. The director is present. I am resurrection realized. And resurrection is the law of this house. Let me say it plainly, and let me say it until it breaks the old hypnosis. Error is impersonal. Let me repeat that. Error is impersonal suggestion, hypnotism, mesmerism, seeking outlet through any willing belief. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers. And the moment I forget this and take hold of a flesh and blood culprit, I abandon my post. I become a combatant in a street fight instead of the porter at the door of thought. I will not do that. I will not fight people. I will not blame myself. I will recognize impersonal mesmerism trying to stage a scene in my consciousness, and I will refuse it a theater. Now watch how quickly peace returns when I stop personalizing. A word is spoken in the home, a tone pricks the pride, and at once the mind cries, he did this, she always, I never. That is the trap. The moment I place a name on error, I have given it a body, and I have lost my stillness. I cannot permit this. I stop. I breathe once. I remember. Mesmerism is presenting itself for adoption. I do not adopt. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. This is not sentimental, it is spiritual diagnosis. They know not because a hypnotism is operating, and my task is not to prosecute, but to depersonalize, to release the person from my accusation, and to dismiss the suggestion as having no law. When I do that, compassion flows, because separation dissolves. I can speak with clarity without heat. I can correct without contempt. And if words are not needed, I can be silent, because I in that moment assume conscious dominion over mind and body, and the scene is deprived of its fuel. This same principle must be applied with even greater tenderness inside ourselves. Guilt and shame are also suggestions. Hear me. Guilt and shame are also suggestions. They are the same mesmerism dressed in piety, and their function is to keep the mind noisy and the body tense, to keep breath high and shallow, to keep the nervous system in a courtroom without a judge. There is therefore now no condemnation to them which are in Christ Jesus. No condemnation. Condemnation is the racket. I will not host it. I do not excuse wrong. I transmute it by removing it from the ledger of personality and placing it where it belongs as an impersonal belief that found a momentary channel. Repentance, then, is not hating myself. It is dissolving the belief so completely that it can never be repeated. Only that can be externalized, which is the state of consciousness. I change state. The act cannot return. Let me give you a scene. A young man came to me crushed under a failure, contracts broken, words he regretted, bodies wearied by the strain. He said, I ruined it. I am the problem. I said, no. The problem is that you have believed a suggestion of lack and separation, and it acted itself through you. Put down the whip. Put up thy sword. Breathe once. Now stand as I, and say within yourself, not loudly, not bravely, but truly, I am not a self apart. I and the Father are one. He breathed that I on the exhale, and on the third breath the eyes lifted. We did not talk about restitution then. We talked about release. When the condemnation fell, the body softened, and the mind could hear instruction. Then and only then could the outer amends be guided by wisdom instead of panic. Do you see what has happened? By stripping blame from people and from myself, I have stripped the scene of its characters and left the stage to I alone. Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. That is not indulgence. That is the miracle of a clean slate produced by a shift in consciousness. The moment condemnation drops, separation drops. And the moment separation drops, the fight over health and supply ends, because we are no longer dividing one life into competing parcels. There is one body and one spirit. One, not my health and thy health, but the undivided life. That is I, expressing where you are and where I am, without rivalry, without bargain, without fear. Therefore, I will not fight people. I will not blame myself. I will stand here, the porter at the door of thought, and name every disturbance for what it is, impersonal hypnotism, and I will let it pass. Judge not, that ye be not judged, is not a morality tale. It is a technique of liberation. As judgment quiets, breath quiets. As condemnation leaves, tension leaves. As I refuse adoption of error, dominion returns, compassion returns, and the invisible government of I has nothing in me that can be used against me. Then we are prepared for the next unveiling, that there is no my and thy in life at all, but only the one infinite I, forever whole, forever present, forever sufficient. There is no my health and thy health. There is no my life and thy life. There is one life, one health, one undivided wholeness, expressing itself as infinite form and function. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, not parceled, not mated out in rations to the deserving or the fortunate, but fullness one ocean, not competing cups. There is one body and one spirit, says the apostle, and I will not divide what God has made one. I cannot permit my thought to set up little reservoirs labeled mine and yours, because the very label is the lie that breeds fear. Therefore, I assume conscious dominion over the economics of my thought. I end the quarrel at its root. I and the Father are one, and because I am one with the source, I stand in the indivisible river of being. I do not beg that river to come to me or to you. I recognize that it already is the life of me and the life of you, without rivalry, without preference, without end. Now, part of our trouble has been this. Separation teaches us to strive. The instant I imagine a private storehouse called my strength, my time, my healing, I become a manager of scarcity. I ration breath. I hoard energy. I fear tomorrow because I see the bins running low. I compare. I compete. I pray as a beggar because I think there are only so many loaves on a human table. But hear the Master. Take no thought for your life. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Give you what? The kingdom. Not a crumb from under the table. Not a 2-day extension. Not an extra pint of vigor, the kingdom. If the kingdom is given, what am I doing counting coins? If I am the branch in the vine, why am I arguing with another branch about sap? I am the vine. Ye are the branches. One vine life, one sap, one health circulating through all, not parceled, not earned, not withheld. Therefore, I stop the inner auction. I refuse the posture of a private shopper in a crowded store. I rest in the fullness that already is. Now, yes, this unity is not sentiment. It is law, and it governs our relations as surely as it governs ourselves. My interests are your interests, not as a pious phrase, but because there is only one I living as both of us. If I wrongfully deprive you, I have cut the very branch on which I sit. If I bless you, I have loosened the channel through which blessing returns, not as reward, but as the law of one flow. With what measure ye mete, it shall be measured to you again. Why? because the measurer and the measured are not two in I. Inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these, ye have done it unto me, unto I. So I end the war economics that pits person against person and organ against organ. I look upon you and I say without strain, my supply is your supply. My peace is your peace. My health is your health, because there is no my and thy in reality. There is the one health of I appearing here and there, but never divided. Do you see what that does to fear? The specter of not enough time fades because time is not my allotment to spend. It is the rhythm of I unfolding. The panic of not enough strength dissolves because strength is not fuel in a tank. It is life being itself without effort. The dread of not enough healing evaporates because healing is not shipment from a distant warehouse. It is wholeness revealing itself where a lie about separation used to sit. All that the Father hath is mine. Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine, ever thine. One inheritance, one household, but hear me, unity must be more than a sentence in the head. It must be felt as the climate of being. And where shall I feel it? In the very temple where fear shouts in breath, in chest, in the place closer than breathing. I do not lecture unity to the mind. I let unity be breathed through me until the mind submits. I stand here, porter at the door of thought, and when the old economics knock, my health, thy health, my life, thy life, I do not open, I breathe. And on the gentle exhale, I let the word I rise from the chest without adjective, without argument. I let the one life announce itself by its own softness. In that softness, rivalry dies. In that softness, peace takes its seat. In that softness, healing ceases to be an effort and becomes a visibility of what already is. Therefore, I say, I end the struggle by ending the division. I refuse to be a private self in a private storehouse. I live as branch in vine, member in one body, self in the one I. And as I live so, I cannot help but see your good as my good and your freedom as my freedom, because there is only I being all. The next breath will show you how to make this more than doctrine. Take it gently, and we will let the body learn what the mind has heard. Now take the next breath exactly as I have promised you, and let us make this more than sentence. Sit quietly. I do not say rigidly. I say attentively. Feet placed where the earth can find them. Hands at rest. On the lap. On the arm of the chair. Anywhere that does not ask you to hold a pose. Let the jaw unhook from its little argument. Let the tongue rest on the floor of the mouth. Eyes may close or half close. I will not argue with eyes. The point is not theater. The point is access. Be still and know that I am God. Not later. Now. Now the method. I do not wrestle with thought. I do not debate memory. I do not swat distractions as if they were wasps. I stand as the porter at the door of thought, and I allow what knocks to pass on. I open to nothing. I refuse nothing. I let suggestions drift as if they were travelers looking for another inn. On the gentle exhale, and always the exhale, I allow the awareness of I to rise, not as a slogan, not as a drumbeat, but as a softness from the chest. No adjectives, no pictures, just I. Feel where it begins, closer than breathing, lower than the clatter of ideas, and let it ride the breath outward like a tide returning to its sea. Then allow the inhale to come of itself. Do not fetch it. Do not measure it. Again, on the exhale, I, not as sound, if sound stirs the nerves, as awareness. I, before Abraham was, I am. If a thought interposes groceries, yesterday's sentence, tomorrow's appointment, I do not argue with it. I do not stamp it with my name. I let it pass the door without admittance. I remain the porter. I remain the tiler over the mind and the body. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee. Staying is not clinging. It is not chasing. It is remaining. I remain as I on the exhale, again and again, with a gentleness that cannot be threatened. How shall I know that I am succeeding? The sign is simple, and it cannot be counterfeited by will. The breathing slows. The breathing becomes quiet, almost imperceptible. There is a felt softening at the base of the skull, a letting go behind the breastbone, a little widening in the ribs. Shoulders descend without orders. The inner drum that had been beating for attention loses interest. Time ceases to bargain. Do not think you have accomplished something. Do not congratulate a technique. This quiet is not a trick. It is the evidence of inward yielding, the mind ceasing to be a tyrant and consenting to be an instrument. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength, not in effort, in quietness. Now a corrective, because I must save you from a cul-de-sac. Do not try to make something happen. Do not hunt for visions. Do not strain your ears for a voice. Do not scan the darkness for colors. If a light flashes, let it flash and pass. If a warmth comes, let it come and go. If a name or a verse rises, bow to it and let it move along. You are not collecting souvenirs of the sanctuary. Put up thy sword against curiosity, against spiritual greed. I am not here to be impressed. I am here to be still. I am here to receive impartation, and impartation arrives only when the house is in order and the doorkeeper is at his post. How long? Long enough for the breath to teach you its gentleness. Often that is 3 minutes, sometimes 5. Sometimes you sit and discover that 2 breaths have rewritten the morning. Do this not once with fanfare, but many times without announcement. At dawn, before letters and headlines. At midday, before the next scene begins. At night, when the world's suggestions crowd the pillow, train the mind kindly until it submits. I cannot pretend that it will not wander. It will. Then I return. I return. I return. Each return is dominion reestablished. Each exhale is the throne set again in its place. And when the breath has grown so quiet that you cannot find its edges, do not leap up as if the work were done. This is the holy instant in which we begin our travel within, without leaving the stillness, without taking up a weapon. I let the realized I stand where the claim appears. If there is a tightness in the chest, I do not attack a chest. I let I be present there. If there is a flicker in the knee, I do not coach a joint. I let I be present there. If a thought circles the head with its little fear, I do not argue with it. I let I be present there. The Spirit of God hath made me, and the breath of the Almighty hath given me life. I breathe the gentle I on the exhale until the mind consents to that life, and then I carry that consent quietly, tenderly to the very doorstep of the report. There we will stand together, and you will see what resurrection means when it is not a request but a realized presence. Now we travel, not with imagination, not with the nerve of a fixer, but with the meek authority of I. Let the breath be as it has become, unhurried, unadvertised, Now allow attention to move to the very spot that seems to clamor, and do not bring a label with you. Do not say my shoulder, my gut, my temple. Do not recite the history. Do not fetch a diagnosis. Do not import yesterday's weather into this room. Simply arrive as I, closer than breathing, gentler than thought. I am here. I am here is not a sentence. It is the government of presence. It does not push. It does not persuade. It does not count seconds or bargain for relief. It witnesses. Thou, God, seest me. Let that seer be your own eye. In the quiet, let awareness stand directly in the midst of the sensation, as you might stand in a doorway, not to slam it on an intruder, but to let the house know the owner is present. I do not manage tissue. I do not order fluids. I do not line up molecules as if I were a foreman on a late shift. I am here. Now hear the meaning of resurrection in practice. What you have called deadness, numbness in a limb, silence in a nerve, barrenness in a function, what you have called stagnation, damage, delay, these are not conditions of life. They are beliefs of absence. Resurrection is not a request for life to return. Resurrection is the recognition that life is the only presence here. I am the resurrection and the life. Not I will be, I am. Therefore, I stand in the very place that claims absence of life, and I do not argue with darkness. I reveal that there is no such thing as an absence of I. Say within yourself on the soft exhale, not loudly, not heroically, but truthfully, here I am. Not I the manager, I the presence. If the spot is a knot in the chest, let I stand in the chest. If the spot is a throb in the brow, let I stand in the brow. If the spot is a heaviness in the lower back, let I stand there. Do not reach out from the head to touch it. Let the I that rises from the chest simply be there without description. As you do this, do not look for a sign. Should a warmth come, let it come and pass. Should a breath deepen, let it deepen without comment. It is the spirit that quickeneth. Spirit quickens by being, not by display. I will give you a scene so you can feel the texture of this. A man came saying, my right side is a desert. No air will go there. We did not summon a wind. I asked him to sit, to let the breath be as it wished, and to bring the awareness we have trained to the quiet place under the right rib. We said together once on the exhale, I am here. The other side answered with a larger breath, as if to prove itself. We ignored that bravado and returned to the right, I am here. On the third exhale, there was no rush, only a small yielding, like frost releasing from a window pane. We did not applaud. We remained. Lazarus, come forth, is not a magic sentence. It is presence, calling presence into visibility. And when presence is recognized, the bindings fall of their own accord. Now, yes, in this very instant, the mind will attempt to return to the lectern with its familiar files, time, prognosis, age, past failure. It will whisper, you tried this before. This has been 20 years, the physician said. Your father had this at your age. I cannot permit these world thoughts to assume the bench. I stand here as the porter at the door of thought. Get thee behind me. I do not fight the sentences. I do not attend their trial. I let them knock and pass by. Then, again, on the gentle exhale, I am here. And I place no era, no calendar, no chart between I and this spot. Jesus Christ, the same yesterday and today and forever. The sameness of I dissolves the argument of time. At times, the sensation will swell as if to reclaim jurisdiction. Do not interpret this as defeat. It is often only the last performance of a dismissed actor. Remain. Be not afraid. Only believe. Believe what? Believe nothing about outcomes. Believe I. Abide. If attention slides away, if an old fright breaks in, do not scold. Return, return, return. Each return is resurrection practiced. Each return is the stone rolled back from the mouth of the cave where you had laid the living among the dead ideas. I will not pretend that this returning is effortless at the first. We have trained the mind for years to be a commentator and a bailiff. It will attempt to reclaim its post, but as surely as breath slows when we honor I, the mind will learn its new employment, and stillness will become the default climate in which signs follow of themselves. Extend this practice beyond the chair. In a meeting where dread sits like a weight in the stomach, place I there without phrase. In the night when the temple drums behind the eyes, let I stand there and say on the exhale, here I am. On the street when the knee threatens, when the hand forgets, when the heart hurries, do not coach performance, grant presence. Lo, I am with you always. Always includes this pulse, this joint, this room, this hour. And as you abide so, resurrection ceases to be a memorial day in a book and becomes a present identity that governs mind and body. Then shall you find that what you had called healing was only the veil drawn back from what I am. I will not pretend that this is easy. I had my long periods of practice, and sometimes still the old mesmerism will try to get the best of me. A sentence will swell. A fear will throw its coat over the banister of my thought, and for a moment it seems to run the room. Then I snap out of it. I do not mean I jerk my nerves. I mean I awaken to my post. I return to I. Watch and pray, said the Master. Be sober. Be vigilant, says the Apostle. The watching is not paranoid. It is priestly. I am the porter at the door of thought. I am the tiler over my mind and my body. I maintain my God-given dominion. And when the mind wanders into the street, I do not scold it there. I take it gently by the hand and bring it back into the sanctuary on the soft exhale of I. Now hear me. The victory is not a day without a knock. The victory is the speed and softness of your return. For a just man falleth 7 times and riseth up again. Rising is the sign. Catching it earlier is the sign. Where once you were gone for hours into the fog of suggestion, now you notice in minutes, then in moments, then in the very instant of its first footfall, you are at the door. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Resistance is not a wrestling match. Resistance is non-admittance. I do not argue with a traveler. I simply do not open the door. And if in some haste I have unlatched it and a chill has entered, I do not throw a fit about drafts. I reassume dominion and close the door without blame and without delay. Let me put it as a vow, because vows train consciousness. Nothing shall enter my mind or body that defileth while I stand here as the porter at the door of thought. And if it seems to have entered, if panic has raised my shoulders, if condemnation has tightened the gut, if a report has started an inner storm, then in that very moment I return to my post. I do not take time to whip myself in the hallway. There is therefore now no condemnation to them which are in Christ Jesus. Condemnation is the racket. I will not host it. I breathe once. I let the gentle I rise on the exhale. I let the breath come of itself on the inhale, and on the next exhale I take my seat again. Return unto thy rest, O my soul. He restoreth my soul. Restoration is built into returning. Do not delay it with self-accusation. Do this often and without flourish. Between calls, before an answer, at the sink, at a light, at the threshold of a room, little returns, brief and real, 2 breaths can turn a morning. 1 exhale of I can unseat a quarrel before it finds words. This is the meaning of pray without ceasing, not babbling, not pleading, but frequent reseating of attention in the one who governs. Train the mind kindly until it submits. It will wander. Then I return. It will posture. Then I return. It will try to defend its rights as commentator-in-chief. Then I return. Each return is dominion reestablished. Each return is resurrection rehearsed. Each return shortens the distance between suggestion and silence until the distance is none. And then a change comes. You cannot schedule. Stillness ceases to be a session and becomes a way of walking. You rise from the chair without leaving the sanctuary. You speak while remaining in the hush. You drive and discover that the hands are moved more safely than they used to be when you thought you were steering. Your seeing alters. You look out and do not find an outside. Consider the lilies, how they grow. You see that the same eye that breathes you is the life of the grass, the timing of the bird, the pulse moving like a tide in your own wrist. You are not trying to hold peace. Peace holds you. You are not hunting for signs. Signs follow. And when old suggestion knocks again as it will upon the door of this world, you need not dread its arrival, for the habit is formed. I stand. I watch. I breathe the gentle eye. I return again and again until there is nothing left to return from. Only the quiet governance of I revealing itself as the health, the wisdom, the order of your day. Stand therefore, and standing becomes walking, and walking becomes living as the realized I. Step outside with me, not to collect proof, but to let the world preach what the mind forgets. Look at the blade of grass pushing through the seam of a sidewalk, without proclamation, without committee. Who invited it? Who measures its ascent? The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof. Fullness means this ordinary miracle is the way of things. Hear the sparrow cut the air without a flight plan, cross a continent without a compass in its beak. Behold the fowls of the air. Your heavenly Father feedeth them. And here I say what must be said in the first person, or it will remain poetry. I am the life of this grass. I am the wisdom in this wing. I am the quiet insistence by which this leaf unfolds on time. Not a noisy I, a gentle I, not mine and yours, I. Now watch the sap rise. No tree attends a seminar on circulation. No root studies hydraulics. Spring arrives, and the law of itself appears as movement. In the body, the same is demonstrated. The heart remembers its work when consciousness sleeps. Nails appear at their appointed pace. A cut closes of its own governance. Of mine own self I can do nothing, said the Master. And if the hand cannot lift itself, except an unseen I direct it, how much less shall I pretend that my healing is a personal feat? Therefore I assume my proper posture. I yield to the unseen director. I refuse to beg a fickle power. I consent to the present presence. I do not whip the body into compliance. I witness that there is an I governing body and mind now, as surely as there is an eye by which a bird knows the hour to turn its wing. Translate this with me, from sight to realization, or it will remain a pleasant walk. The very eye that moves the tide within the shore moves the tide within the chest. In him we live and move and have our being. We do not rent life by the month. Life is the landlord of us. Therefore, healing is not exceptional. It is natural visibility, the nature of relieving the mind of its arguments till the body remembers its order. If the river flows there between stones, it will flow here between ribs. If the branch receives its sap without petition, this arm receives its animation without strain. I am the resurrection and the life, not I as a person pronouncing, but I as life recognizing itself and taking its own place. Now let me address the fear that clings to calendars. Time is the mind's tape measure. Life is being. Nature will show you this until you blush for worrying. The tree does not hurry to make up for a late spring. It stands, and therefore it buds. The moon does not fear that it will fail its appointment. It consents to its orbit and appears. Take no thought for the morrow. My times are in thy hand. 1,000 years is one day. One day is 1,000 years. This is not arithmetic. It is assurance that I is not subject to clocks. Stillness introduces you to that assurance. On the exhale, when the breath grows quiet and the mind lays down its watch, you find that the pulse in your wrist is not counting down. It is bearing witness to now. Peace, be still, and the storm called future loses its weather. Therefore, take this as your walking meditation. As you move through a park or a street, do not merely admire, identify, say within, gently, and only when it rises true, I am the life of this grass. I am the wisdom of that wing. I am the rhythm of this pulse. Not Joel swelling himself. I revealed as all. Do not turn it into a swashbuckling assertion. Do not preach it a pigeon. Let it be recognition, not performance. And when the world thought tries to steal it, yes. But what about next week? What about that report? What about age? Stand as the porter at the door of thought and do not admit it. Return to the breath that the tide has taught you. Return to the gentle eye that the lily has modeled for you. Having seen outwardly the constancy by which all things live, return inwardly to the core claim until it stands of itself. Resurrection is not wishful thinking. It is realized identity maintained quietly, continuously. Now we draw the line that must not be erased. Renewal, regeneration, resurrection. This is not poetry. This is our lived progression. Renewal is the first kindness. I rest from struggle. I stop the auction of anxieties. I refuse to be a manager of scarcity. Regeneration follows of itself when the mind consents and the breath slows. The body and the thoughts remember their unseen director and yield. And then resurrection is no longer a hope across a horizon, but a present identity realized and maintained. I am the resurrection and the life. Not I as a performer, I as presence, here, undivided, functioning. Therefore I set my seal upon this. And hear how I put it, because I mean it as mandate and mercy at once. I cannot permit the mind to run unattended. I cannot permit world thought to sit in my chair. I must maintain my God-given dominion. I stand here the porter at the door of thought. And if a sleep has stolen my post for a moment, I return without scolding and take my seat again. Be still and know that I am God. I am still. I know. I maintain. This is not strain. This is governance. Now your assignment, and I ask you to keep it sacred and quiet, not as secrecy, but as reverence. 3 times a day at least, morning before headlines, midday before engagements multiply, evening before sleep. Sit for 3 to 5 minutes and do the one thing that changes everything. On the gentle exhale, let the word I rise from the chest without adjective, without picture, without performance. Let the inhale come of itself. If thoughts knock, do not argue. Do not stamp your name on them. Allow them to pass the door without admittance. If a report or fear appears, impersonalize it at once. Hypnotism, suggestion, nothing to own, nothing to fight, and return to I. Should the urge arise to announce your progress, to don the swashbuckler's cape and say, I am this and I am that, put up thy sword, let it be the gentle I. Keep it within the sanctuary of practice, where signs follow because you did not chase them. Between these sittings, weave little returns into your day, 2 breaths at the sink, 1 exhale of I at the threshold of a room, a soft here I am placed wherever a claim appears. Refuse condemnation when you forget. Return. Refuse heroics when you remember. Remain. Pray without ceasing becomes this rhythm. Exhale I, inhale grace. And as errors present themselves in others or in headlines, remove the person and see only suggestion seeking a host. Deny it your door and bless in silence. There is no my health and thy health to defend. There is one life revealing itself everywhere, and you are its witness by stillness, not by noise. Now let me speak the closing assumption you must carry into the next breath. I am not awaiting renewal. I rest. I am not begging for regeneration. I yield. I am not pleading for resurrection. I am resurrection realized. All that the Father hath is mine. Lo, I am with you always. Here, in this chest, in this breath, in this unadvertised hour, life is present, undivided, and functioning. I do not credential it with results. I consent to it as reality. I stand guard. I breathe the gentle I. I live the dominion I have been given, and as I maintain this quiet government, the signs that follow are natural. Order appears where confusion bragged. Peace holds where fear barked. The body remembers its lawful rhythm. From renewal to regeneration to resurrection, I live as the realized I now, and now again, and now without interruption.